In 2020, a leaked Chinese diplomatic cable identified a single Indian official as the most dangerous variable in South Asia. A few years prior, an Indian journalist investigating the budget of this man's office found his laptop infected with advanced malware. The code carried the digital signature of a Chinese state-sponsored hacking group, suggesting that even a routine inquiry into this office was treated as a high-level security threat in Beijing. That man is Ajit Doval. At 80 years old, he serves as India's national security advisor, operating with a level of public silence that is almost unprecedented for a high-ranking official. He holds no press conferences and grants no interviews. Doval's influence doesn't come from military rank. It comes from 7 years spent undercover in Pakistan, a career spent inside intelligence networks, and a deep understanding of how India's adversaries calculate risk. For decades, India's security strategy followed a recurring cycle. Following a major attack, the government would issue condemnations, compile evidence into dossiers, and seek international sympathy. It was a purely reactive posture that the rest of the world could anticipate with total accuracy. This vulnerability was exposed in December 1999, when Indian Airlines flight IC-814 was hijacked and flown to a Taliban-controlled airfield in Kandahar, Afghanistan. Ajit Doval was the lead negotiator on the ground. Despite his elite training, he was forced to stand on a runway surrounded by hostile fighters, essentially helpless, while the lives of 180 civilians hung in the balance. The crisis ended in national humiliation. To secure the hostages' release, India was forced to free 3 high-profile militants. One of them was Masood Azhar, a man who would go on to build a terror network responsible for some of the region's deadliest attacks. Doval's experience in Kandahar became the catalyst for a new logic. He realized that when a nation's response is predictable and purely defensive, its adversaries will always find a way to exploit its restraint. In 2014, the Indian government restructured its security leadership, appointing Doval as National Security Advisor. He quickly transformed the office from a purely advisory role into a central hub for executive decision-making. Doval introduced a strategy he calls defensive offense. This strategy moves beyond just absorbing blows. It dictates that India should target the planning stages of an attack, forcing the adversary to deal with the consequences of their aggression on their own territory. This shift meant that the established security assumptions held by Pakistan and China were suddenly obsolete. In 2019, Masood Azhar, the man released in the Kandahar swap, orchestrated a suicide bombing in Pulwama that killed 40 Indian soldiers. This was the first major test of the new doctrine. For years, Pakistan operated under the assumption that India would never strike deep across the border, fearing that any conventional military response would trigger a nuclear escalation. India broke that assumption. In the middle of the night, Indian Air Force jets flew deep into Pakistani airspace to strike a militant training camp in Balakot. Doval's years of undercover experience provided a unique insight into the adversary's threshold for conflict. He wagered that a precise, limited strike would call their nuclear bluff without causing a full-scale war, effectively dismantling their psychological leverage over India. While Pakistan relies on proxy warfare, China presents a conventional challenge, a massive $18 trillion economy and a highly modernized military. During the 2017 Doklam standoff and the 2020 border clashes, Doval utilized back-channel negotiations to manage the crisis. By engaging directly with high-level Chinese officials, he helped orchestrate mutual withdrawals that prevented a localized skirmish from expanding. Simultaneously, India hit China in the digital sphere, banning over 200 Chinese apps almost overnight. This action severed Beijing's access to its largest external digital user base, creating a significant setback for the digital expansion of their tech companies into the Indian market. Doval also signaled India's willingness to use its relationship with the Tibetan community as strategic leverage, reminding Beijing that their internal stability remains a sensitive point that India can influence. By utilizing asymmetric economic and informational pressure, Doval created a strategic checkmate. He demonstrated that India could force a retreat without needing to match the sheer physical scale of the Chinese military. In 20 years, the Indian security posture has moved from the passive restraint seen in Kandahar to a multi-dimensional strategy that strikes back in the air, on the ground, and through the economy. Large, highly structured military machines like China's rely on a predictable adversary to formulate their long-term plans. When an opponent's responses are easy to calculate, they are easy to manage. By maintaining a minimal public footprint, Doval complicates a rival's ability to forecast India's responses. When a leader's logic remains opaque to the outside world, adversaries struggle to identify where the actual red lines are. Geopolitical power is increasingly tied to the element of surprise. In a landscape of massive, transparent military machines, a silent and unpredictable mind serves as a nation's most potent deterrent.